You were never his wife in the eyes of our family. You're just a tenant we tolerated. This house is for blood." Those were the first words spoken by Clarissa Beaumont, my late husband's stepmother, the moment I stepped back into the home I shared with Liam for 10 years. Her voice echoed in the marble foyer like an eviction notice. I stood there, still in my funeral dress, clutching the urn that held Liam's ashes, and I knew immediately, they had planned this. Hey, before I take you deeper into this story, do me a favor. Subscribe for more stories of revenge and justice. It is free, and helps us share these warnings with more women. It had only been 10 hours since I stood at Liam's grave. I had chosen a simple hilltop cemetery just outside Portland, Oregon, far from the glittering chaos of the corporate world we both worked in. Liam was the founder of a startup-turned-tech empire, and I, Elise Hale, had been his behind-the-scenes backbone, his operations manager, his confidant, and yes, his legal wife. But Clarissa never accepted that. She had paraded his half-brother Blake around like the prodigal son, angling to make him heir to everything. And now, with Liam gone, she saw her chance. It started subtly. A text from Blake during the reception: "Might be best if you stay at a hotel tonight. Mom needs space to grieve." I ignored it. Then, as I turned the key in the door of our estate in Lake Oswego, it would not turn. My key, the one Liam had made for me the day we moved in, no longer fit. My luggage, which had been in the guest bedroom during the service, now sat in the driveway. And through the side window, I saw Clarissa arranging fresh tulips, my favorite, in Liam's mother's crystal vase. As if she had always lived here. When she opened the door, it was chained. "You need to leave, Elise." Liam's name was the only one on the property. "You have no legal claim," she said with a satisfied smirk. Behind her, Blake was boxing up items, my photography gear, our travel books, even the pottery Liam had made for our anniversary last year. "We were married," I said, my voice low but firm. "And that house is marital property." Clarissa leaned closer, her breath laced with wine. "You think marriage means something? You signed no prenup. No trust. No stake in his company. You were a glorified secretary." The words cut, but not because they were true. Because they believed them. She gestured toward the sidewalk. "Take your things. And be grateful we're not pressing charges." I looked at the urn in my hands. Liam would never have wanted this. But I said nothing. Not yet. Because while they thought I was powerless, they had forgotten one thing. The deed was not in Liam's name. It was in mine. And I had the receipts. The wind rustled the trees lining our street as I turned and walked away, my heels clicking with every step. The same sound Clarissa would hear tomorrow when I returned. Not alone. With a lawyer. And a court order. By the time I reached the freeway, the clouds had started to spit rain over the windshield. I drove aimlessly, past the boutiques of downtown Lake Oswego, past the hospital where Liam had taken his last breath, until I found myself in front of the Marriott near the riverfront. It was the cheapest decent hotel nearby that took walk-ins. The receptionist barely looked up. I must have looked like a ghost, black dress wrinkled from the funeral, eyes swollen, an urn tucked under my arm like a purse. Once in the room, I placed Liam's ashes on the dresser like a centerpiece and collapsed onto the stiff white bedspread. My mind was buzzing. Not from grief. From rage. Quiet, simmering rage. Clarissa thought she had one. That by changing locks and parading her wine-soaked grief, she had claimed the home Liam and I built together. But grief was not power. Paperwork was. I opened the hotel desk drawer and pulled out the folder I had hidden there months ago. Inside it, the original deed to the house. Not in Liam's name. Not even in mine directly. It was in the name of EH Strategic Holdings LLC. My holding company. Elise Hale, sole owner and signatory. 3 years ago, when Liam was dealing with the fallout of his failed startup and deep in debt, I had quietly bought the estate using the money I had earned ghostwriting for Fortune 500 executives. I let him believe he had gotten the mortgage with help from his contacts. Let him believe he was still the provider. Because his pride was delicate. And because I loved him. I was the ghostwriter of his empire and our home. And now, I was the ghost behind the ownership too. The next morning, I called my attorney. "Ma'am, I was expecting this call," said Ava Castor, the type of lawyer who never used pleasantries and always got to the point. "I assume this is about the Lake Oswego property." She changed the locks, Ava. And told me I was just a guest. "You have the LLC papers?" "They're in front of me." "And the original deed?" "Signed and notarized." "With a copy of Liam's acknowledgement letter from 3 years ago." Ava paused. "The one you made him sign after he tried to list it on the startup's balance sheet." I nodded, even though she could not see me. "That one." "Then let's go home, Elise." At exactly 11:45 a.m., Ava and I pulled up to the estate in a black sedan that screamed silent authority. She wore her signature navy suit and heels sharp enough to count as weapons. I clutched a brown envelope. Inside it, the deed, the LLC papers, the letter Liam had signed. Clarissa's SUV was parked across the lawn. And a moving truck idled by the curb. They were not just stealing space. They were stealing everything. Ava turned to me as we got out of the car. "Are you ready for this?" I nodded, slipping the key into my purse, the real one. The one to the back entrance that Clarissa had forgotten existed. We walked straight to the front. I rang the bell. Clarissa opened it with a glass of Chardonnay already in hand. She did not smile this time. "Elise," she said, tone clipped. "You are not welcome here." Ava stepped forward. "Ms. Beaumont, my name is Ava Castor, legal counsel for Elise Hale. I have documentation proving she is the sole legal owner of this estate, and you are currently trespassing." Clarissa blinked. Blake appeared behind her, holding Liam's high school trophies like they were heirlooms. "Trespassing?" Clarissa scoffed. "You're delusional. Liam bought this house." "No," Ava said coolly. "Elise did. Through Strategic Holdings LLC, 3 years ago. We have a signed acknowledgement from Liam himself. You can argue emotion all you want, but the county recorder's office does not deal in feelings." She handed Clarissa a copy of the deed. Clarissa's hand trembled slightly. "You faked this," she said, eyes narrowing. "You tricked my son." "No," I said, stepping into the foyer. "I saved him. And I saved this home. And now I'm taking it back." Behind her, Blake's grip loosened. A trophy fell to the floor with a dull thud. "Please leave, Clarissa," Ava said. "Or Officer Linwood, who's waiting in the car behind us, will escort you out. Your choice." Clarissa's jaw clenched, but her eyes darted to the side window. She saw the cruiser. She stepped back. But before she did, she hissed, "You think this is over?" "No," I said. "I think it's just begun." She backed away into the living room. Ava turned to me. "Welcome home, Elise." But home did not feel the same. Not yet. And as I stepped inside, I saw something on the hallway console that made my stomach turn. A new will. Signed yesterday. In shaky handwriting. Liam's. The ink still fresh. I picked it up slowly, heart pounding. There was no way he signed this. Not in his condition. Not after what he told me in the hospital. Not after what he whispered on his final night. "Elise, check the safe. Everything you need is there. The hallway felt colder than I remembered. Maybe it was the echo of betrayal still lingering in the walls, or maybe it was the draft from the back door Clarissa had likely opened earlier. I stared at the will on the table, its creased edges, the rushed strokes in Liam's handwriting, the sudden appearance after weeks of silence from his end. I handed it to Ava. She scanned it quickly, her lawyer's eye catching what I had feared. This was signed yesterday. Witnessed by Blake Ann, your husband's nurse. I nodded slowly. Nurse Emery. The one Clarissa had insisted on hiring in Liam's final week, despite the hospital providing a full care team. Emery had always felt out of place, like she answered to someone else. She's on payroll. Ava asked. Clarissa's payroll, I confirmed. Then this isn't a will, she said, folding it with disgust. It's insurance fraud dressed in grief. We'll deal with it later. I made my way upstairs. Every step echoed memories I had not processed, Liam humming down the hall, the clatter of mugs on the stairwell table, our arguments and reconciliations beneath the slanted roof. At the end of the hallway stood the small oak cabinet he had built with his own hands. We had always joked it was our budget bank vault. Inside it, tucked between Liam's journals and the instruction manual for our smart thermostat, was the safe. It was digital. I had the code. Only 2 people ever did. Me. And Liam. I punched in our wedding date. A soft click answered. Inside were the things Liam had promised in his final breath: protection, proof, and the truth. There was a single yellow envelope with E.H. scrawled in thick black ink. Underneath it, a flash drive, 2 notarized documents, and, oddly, a small velvet box. I took them all to the bedroom and sat on the edge of our shared bed, now a war zone of loyalty and legacy. The envelope had 1 sheet of paper. His handwriting was weaker now, but still his. Elise. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means Clarissa has done what I feared. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was ashamed. Of being sick. Of being weak. Of knowing my own family might turn on you the second I was gone, asterisk. Asterisk, I knew about the LLC. I found the paperwork by accident, but I didn't say anything because I knew you did it out of love. You carried us when I couldn't. I'll never forget that, asterisk. Asterisk, the flash drive contains recordings. Legal ones. From the hospital, from meetings Clarissa thought I was too sedated to attend. There's also a signed, notarized will inside. The real one. Dated 2 weeks before I passed, asterisk. Asterisk, give it to Ava. She'll know what to do, asterisk. Asterisk, also, give Blake the velvet box. You'll understand why, asterisk. Whatever they try, remember, you don't have to fight alone anymore. You already won the moment you chose love over control. L. My hands shook as I placed the letter down. He had known. He had planned. He had chosen me, not just in life, but beyond it. I opened the velvet box next. Inside was Liam's old fraternity ring. The one Blake had always wanted, the one Liam refused to hand over. Taped to the underside of the box was a sticky note. For the boy who always wanted the title, but never earned the weight. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Downstairs, I heard Ava speaking to Officer Linwood. Clarissa and Blake had left. The house was ours again, but the real battle had just begun. Ava walked up with her phone pressed to her ear. We have a problem, she said to me, covering the speaker. Clarissa's already filed Liam's fake will with probate court. She moved fast, I said. She was always 2 steps ahead, Ava muttered. But now, we're 5 steps ahead. She pointed at the flash drive. That is your nuclear weapon. We play it right, we end this. I nodded and handed it to her. But I kept the ring. Because tomorrow, I plan to pay Blake a visit. To show him what a legacy really looks like. The next morning, the sky was a pale gray over Lake Oswego, calm, cold, expectant. I dressed carefully, slipping into the dark green blazer Liam always said made me look like I owned the courtroom. I would not need the courtroom today. Just a coffee shop. Blake always started his day at Hollow and Beam, the over-designed espresso bar he co-owned with his trust fund friends. The kind of place that sold lavender foam and had no prices on the menu. I arrived at 8:07. He was already seated on the patio, legs crossed, black leather loafers tapping to the jazz playlist he probably curated himself. He looked up when he saw me, surprised. Then smug. Elise. To what do I owe this awkward reunion? I sat across from him and slid the velvet box across the table. His face changed before he even opened it. Liam told me to give you this, I said. Personally. Blake popped the box open, expecting treasure. Inside, the frat ring. And Liam's sticky note. He stared at it, his jaw tightening, the bravado cracking just slightly. What is this supposed to mean? It means you were never the man Liam trusted with his legacy. And you never will be. Blake leaned back. You don't get to talk to me about legacy. You were just a convenience. I smiled. No, Blake. I was the woman who funded Liam's startup behind the scenes when your mother refused. I was the one who kept the business afloat when his investors walked. I was the one he entrusted with the house, the will, and the truth. And now, I'm the woman who's going to ruin you in court if you don't walk away. I slid a USB drive across the table. A copy. The original was with Ava. Blake picked it up cautiously. What is this? A recording. Of your mother. Pressuring the palliative care nurse to falsify Liam's signature on a will, while he was on morphine. It also includes a clip of her saying, and I quote, "If Elise ends up with this house, I'll burn it to the foundation." Blake's lips parted, but nothing came out. She said that in a hospital hallway, I added. Right next to a security camera. We pulled the footage. He blinked slowly. So what do you want? I leaned in. You and Clarissa will withdraw the fake will from probate court today. You will issue a signed statement verifying that you witnessed it under duress and that your mother orchestrated it. Then, you will publicly endorse Liam's final notarized will, the real one. The one in which he names me executor of his estate and sole beneficiary. Blake looked at the USB again. And if I don't? I'll make sure your espresso empire becomes the next viral scandal. Tech Air covers up forged will to steal dead brother's estate. I'll make your name trend for the wrong reasons. Blake ran a hand through his hair. She'll never agree. She does not have to, I said. Just you. Let her burn on her own. He laughed once, short and bitter. You always were dangerous. No. I was quiet. And you mistook that for weakness. I stood up. By the way, I've already emailed the video to 4 people. And my lawyer has it on legal hold. I walked away before he could respond. Back in the car, my phone buzzed. Ava, they just filed a withdrawal notice. Probate court's flagging the will as suspicious. We're up next, asterisk asterisk. I closed my eyes. It was starting to shift. But I knew Clarissa was not the type to fold quietly. And sure enough, as I pulled into the driveway, a black SUV was parked out front. Clarissa. Wearing black again. Waiting at my front door. This time, she was not holding a wine glass. She was holding a lawyer. Clarissa stood under a black umbrella, dressed like grief itself. She had traded her silk robe and wine glass for a sleek pantsuit and heels that dug into my stone walkway like claws. Beside her stood a man in a gray wool coat, tall and smug, holding a thick folder. "Elise," she said, as I stepped out of my car. "I see your lawyer's been busy." "I could say the same," I replied, walking past her toward the door. "This is Martin Cray," she said. "My counsel." Martin nodded. "Mrs. Hale. You've received notice of our pending injunction." "No. But I'm sure you'll leave a copy wedged in the mailbox." Clarissa stepped forward, blocking the door. "We are filing for control of Liam's company's shares, and freezing all estate assets until a full inquiry is completed," she announced, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "There are questions surrounding your financial involvement in his businesses. Especially the LLC you secretly formed behind his back." I smirked. So this was the next move, painting me as a manipulative gold digger. I turned to Martin. "You're going to challenge my ownership with a trail of contracts Liam signed himself. You're going to argue coercion against a woman who spent 3 years paying the mortgage and writing the pitch decks that got him funding." Martin looked unsure. Clarissa didn't care. "You think Liam loved you," she hissed. "But you were just convenient. I know what he said to me during his last lucid moment." That was a lie. Liam hadn't been lucid in 2 days before he passed. "I have a statement," she went on. "From Nurse Emery." "Good," I said. "Because Nurse Emery's license is currently under review." I forwarded her video deposition to the Oregon Nursing Board. She admitted she witnessed a signature under pressure. You might want to get ahead of that before she flips to save herself. Clarissa's jaw tightened. Her lawyer shot her a look. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. I was going to wait. But since you're here. I opened it. Inside, Liam signed and notarized will. 2 weeks before his death. Naming me as executor and sole beneficiary of his estate, including all business shares, royalties, property, and accounts. Clarissa's face went still. Martin reached for the document, scanned it. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "From Liam. Via a safe he left in my care. Along with a video recording and a letter to the board of directors." "Video recording?" Clarissa snapped. "Yes," I said calmly. "He made it with his company's lawyer. It outlines his wishes. It includes a full explanation of how he knew I bought the house. How he asked me to keep it secret to preserve his pride. And how he expected me to protect what he built from people like you." The rain started falling harder. Clarissa's lawyer stepped back. He knew what this meant. "This won't stop me," she whispered. "Liam was my family." "No," I said. "He was my husband. You tried to erase that. But Liam left his truth in ink and video. And the law sides with the truth." Clarissa looked at the house, as if willing it to open for her. But it stayed closed. Sealed. Not just by locks. But by the line Liam had drawn before he died. "You're not welcome here," I said quietly. "Not today. Not ever." She turned slowly, walking to her SUV. She did not speak again. Her lawyer followed, the rain soaking through his coat. Inside, I peeled off my wet jacket, trembling, not from fear, but release. I had stood my ground. But something inside me whispered that Clarissa was not finished. People like her never lose with grace. And sure enough, within an hour, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One text. "The board is meeting Monday. You're not invited." I stared at the screen. Because they had no idea what Liam had also left me. A key. to the very vault where the company stored its original voting agreements. And a voice memo marked, "In case they try to shut you out." Monday morning. The air around Riverbank Tower felt like tension wrapped in designer wool. Liam's tech company, Novolith Dynamics, operated from the 27th floor, behind mirrored glass and exclusive keycard access. I had walked through those halls 100 times with him. But never alone. I wore the navy sheath dress he once called CEO armor, hair pinned back, heels echoing power with every step. In my hand, the leather folder that held everything they thought I would never find. The receptionist blinked when she saw me. "Elise? I wasn't told you were on today's list." "You're right," I said calmly. "But Mr. Reynard from legal is expecting me." "Confirm it." She hesitated, tapped her keyboard, and froze. "Then, I'll notify the boardroom." "Do that." The elevator ride was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. When the doors opened, I stepped into the lion's den. 12 people sat around the polished walnut table. Board members. Shareholders. Executives. All dressed in muted colors and sharper smiles. Clarissa sat at the end. Her black veil gone. Now she wore steel-gray power and the smirk of someone confident this was already won. "Elise," she said with faux surprise. "This is a closed session. Company leadership only." I walked past her. Reached into my folder. And pulled out Liam's original board voting rights document, the one he had signed before his health declined. The one that named me as his proxy on all matters involving Novolith in the event of mental or physical incapacitation. Then I placed a small voice recorder on the table. "I was told I wasn't invited," I said. But Liam disagreed. I pressed play. Liam's voice filled the room. Clear. Steady. Strong. "This is Liam Hale. Date, August 14th, recorded in the presence of legal counsel. In the event of my incapacity, I designate Elise Hale as my board proxy and executor of my voting rights, both Class A and Class B shares. She is to be given full access to company financials, decisions, and emergency proceedings. She knows this company better than anyone. And she'll protect it better than anyone." Clarissa's eyes darkened. Her nails tapped the table in rapid-fire fury. One of the older board members, a man named Granger, cleared his throat. "We had no record of this file." "You do now," I said, sliding them signed originals, notarized. Another board member flipped through the pages. "She has the majority vote," he said quietly. "Even without the trust shares." Clarissa stood. "This is a play. A ploy. That recording could be staged." "It's on record with Novolith's legal team," I said. "Check with Marcus Denon. He was present when Liam made it." A beat passed. One of the junior execs began furiously texting under the table. "Let's assume this is all valid," Clarissa snapped. "You still don't understand the business. You were a support act, Elise. Not the visionary." I looked her in the eye. "You're right. I wasn't the visionary. I was the engine. The editor of every white paper. The strategist behind every funding round. The builder behind every pitch." Then I turned to the board. "You want to talk numbers? Novolith's projected Q4 dip will come from overfunding the Edge Sync division, a mistake I flagged in April." Liam listened. "You didn't." They went silent. Clarissa sat down, but not in defeat. "In calculation. We'll reconvene in 1 week," Granger said. "Legal will verify the documents, but until then, Elise Hale holds Liam's vote. This session is closed." As I gathered my papers, Clarissa stood beside me and whispered, "You're not as clever as you think." I smiled without looking at her. No, I said. I'm just more dangerous when underestimated. I stepped out of the boardroom and exhaled for the first time in days. But as I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text. Check the basement archive. You missed something important. MD. MD. Marcus Denon. Liam's former lawyer. What else had he hidden down there? What had Liam buried beneath the company walls? I was about to find out. The basement archive of Novolith Dynamics was nothing like the sleek offices above. It smelled of metal, dust, and old ambition. The air was heavy, the kind that made your thoughts feel louder. I swiped my temporary access card, granted hastily by legal after the board meeting, and descended a concrete staircase into the records vault. Marcus Denon's text had been brief. No explanation. No warning. Just coordinates to a room marked Beat 17. Inside, rows of steel cabinets, each labeled with fiscal years and department codes. Paper files. Backup drives. Contracts from the era when digital was not yet law. It took 15 minutes before I found the cabinet Marcus had meant. It was tucked in the back, half blocked by a broken office chair and a stack of unmarked boxes. The label, ND Arch Private H. H for Hale. Inside, dozens of files, some with Liam's name, many marked with red stickers that read, unreleased. I pulled them out, flipping fast, hunting for anything that felt buried. Then I saw it. A black envelope with Liam's handwriting in silver marker. Confidential. Elise only. If Clarissa finds this, it's over. My heart skipped. Inside, a letter and a thick folder of signed documents. The letter was short. Elise. Asterisk if you found this, it means she's gone too far. I knew she would. That's why I asked Marcus to hide this here, asterisk. Asterisk Clarissa forged documents. Not just the will, asterisk. Asterisk she rerouted funds from my early investors into a private trust. Under Blake's name. Without telling me, asterisk. Asterisk she framed the transactions to look like bonuses. But they weren't. They were siphons, asterisk. Asterisk if this comes to light, Novolith's IPO will collapse. But if you hold it, if you control when and how it surfaces, you own the boardroom, asterisk. Asterisk do not use this out of anger. Use it only if she tries to destroy you, asterisk. If she forces you into a corner, this is the exit. Asterisk I'm sorry I didn't stop her myself. I was too late. But you're not, asterisk. L. I stared at the folder. Dozens of pages, wire transfers, fake invoices, shell company registries. Her signature was everywhere. This was not just corporate fraud. It was federal. I tucked the letter into my blazer and made 3 copies of the contents. One for Ava. One for my vault. One for leverage. As I exited the basement, my phone buzzed again. Ava asterisk Clarissa just filed an emergency petition for injunction against your control of Novolith. She's accusing you of coercing Liam during his illness. I smiled. I had not planned to use the folder. But she had just cornered me. I texted back. Time to open the vault. I stepped out into the marble lobby of Novolith's headquarters, holding the folder close to my chest. Across the atrium, Clarissa was arriving with her attorney. Our eyes met. She tilted her chin in mock pity. I lifted the folder. Her smile froze. Because she recognized it. She had not seen it in years. But she knew. This wasn't just a counterattack. This was checkmate. By the next morning, the folder was already in motion. Avis submitted it under seal to the Federal Financial Crimes Unit and quietly notified the Novolith Board's Compliance Division. But she did more than that. She booked me a 9 a.m. interview slot with the Portland Ledger, the most respected business paper in Oregon. "This will spread like wildfire," she said. "And not just because of the money. People love a widow fighting back." By 9:15, I was sitting across from journalist Adrian Cho, who had written exposés on corporate corruption and shady IPOs for a decade. She hit record. "You're prepared for the consequences of going public with this?" she asked. I nodded. My husband trusted me with the truth. It's time everyone else saw it too. We went on record with Liam's real will. With Clarissa's fake version. With the audio. With the trail of stolen funds. Within hours, the Ledger posted an early digital draft. Widow of tech CEO exposes family fraud, secret recordings reveal mother-in-law's scheme. I watched the headlines go live from my kitchen, coffee trembling in my hand. I was still wearing Liam's college hoodie. Still barefoot. Still feeling the weight of grief in my bones. But my phone would not stop buzzing. Marcus from Novolith Legal. Granger from the board. Even Blake. But the one that stopped me was a number I did not recognize. "Unknown, you made a mistake, Elise. You don't understand who my mother really is." I stared at it. Was that a warning? Or a threat? At 2 p.m., Ava called. "Turn on Channel 7. I did. Live footage. Federal agent standing outside Clarissa Beaumont's estate in Lakewood Hills. Moments later, she was led out in handcuffs. Designer coat. Sunglasses. Jaw locked tight. The news anchor's voice was calm but cutting. Sources confirm that Clarissa Beaumont, mother of late Novolith CEO Liam Hale, is being detained on suspicion of corporate fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of estate execution. I stood in silence, the room around me spinning slightly. It had worked. She was going down. By 5 p.m., my inbox was flooded with requests. Interviews. Book deals. Invitations to speak at tech leadership conferences. But none of that mattered. Because an hour later, Blake showed up at my doorstep. No entourage. No lawyers. Just him. Holding a cardboard box. "What is that?" I asked. He looked me in the eye. For once, no smirk. Just something close to shame. The rest of Liam's journals. The ones Mom kept in her safe. "I thought you should have them." I hesitated. "Why now?" Because I saw her get cuffed. And suddenly everything we did felt ugly. He handed me the box. "And because Liam loved you. More than I ever understood." He turned to leave. But before he got to the car, he said one more thing. "You think this is over, Elise. But there's one more thing you missed." I stepped outside. "What?" Blake paused. His face was pale. "Mom left something behind. Something no one's found yet. A backup plan. Just, be ready." Then he drove off. I stood in the cold wind, the cardboard box in my arms, wondering what Clarissa had buried in her wake. And when it would come knocking. The box Blake gave me sat untouched for hours. I could not bring myself to open it at first. It felt too sacred, like opening it might unlock a final goodbye from Liam. But his words had always been clear, the truth matters more than comfort. So just after midnight, with the house silent and the city outside dimmed, I lifted the lid. Inside, 9 leather-bound journals, each labeled with a year in Liam's handwriting. His personal thoughts, ideas, sketches, plans. And near the bottom, a thin blue folder labeled simply, Vault 6B, private. I had never heard him mention Vault 6B. I opened the folder. Inside, a single sheet of paper. A property deed. Not for the Lake Oswego estate. Not for the Portland townhouse we almost bought before the tech boom. But for a cabin. A small one-bedroom property in the forests of southern Oregon. And the deed. It was in Clarissa's name. But the signature at the bottom was not hers. It was forged. Underneath it, a sticky note in Liam's handwriting. Asterisk, if anything happens to me, check the mirror in the study. She kept the original safe key there. I found it once. Then she moved it. I think she knew I saw asterisk. I stood up instantly, heart pounding. The study had been Clarissa's domain when she visited. She had insisted on turning our guest room into her reading corner, even though she barely read. Liam always called it her command center. I pushed open the door. The mirror was still there, oval, antique, with an ornate golden frame. I ran my fingers along the edge. Nothing. Then I tapped. One side echoed. Hollow. I pushed. A soft click. The mirror popped forward slightly, revealing a narrow wall safe. I stared at it. Code pad. But something about the numbers beneath the buttons caught my eye. Faint were patterns. Repeated numbers. I tried the date of Liam's company's first investment. April 22, 2015. Beep. Click. The door opened. Inside were 3 items. 1. A burner phone. 2. A leather notebook. 3. A flash drive taped beneath the shelf. I took them all to the kitchen, hands shaking. The burner phone still had battery. Only 2 messages stored. From a number labeled B. I rerouted the last $250,000. Elise will never see it. Don't forget to wipe the drives at the cabin before probate starts. I opened the flash drive on my laptop. Encrypted files. But Ava had software for that. The leather notebook, though, was the most haunting. Clarissa's handwriting. Page after page of notes detailing Liam's decline. But not with sadness. With strategy. She had timed his sedation doses. Manipulated hospital staff rotations. She had even drafted a care schedule built around when I would not be home. One line made my breath catch. Asterisk, if he tries to transfer control again, we act immediately. Blake knows what to do. Nurse E, on standby. Elise is too naive to see it, asterisk. She had planned everything. Not just to steal. But to silence him. I called Ava. It was 1 a.m., but she answered on the first ring. What did you find? She asked. I told her everything. There was silence for a beat. Elise, she said slowly, this is not just inheritance fraud anymore. This is premeditation. Attempted interference with end-of-life legal decisions. Potential elder abuse. What do we do? We send everything to federal prosecutors. This will hit the grand jury. But, are you ready for what that means? I looked at the mirror still ajar behind me. I thought of Liam. Of the man who had trusted me with everything, except, perhaps, the full scope of his fear. Yes, I said. If I do not finish this, then everything he protected me from was for nothing. Ava sighed. Okay. I'll alert the feds. But Elise. What? They're going to exhume his medical records. Maybe more. This will get loud. I closed the safe slowly. And whispered to the room. Let it get loud. The subpoenas arrived on a Thursday. By Monday, Clarissa's name was on every news ticker west of the Rockies. Charges were pending. Statements were released. Financial regulators opened formal investigations. Novolitha's IPO was paused indefinitely. And me? I stood on the balcony of the home she tried to erase me from, watching the sun rise through Oregon's pale clouds. Clarissa did not show up to her arraignment. Her lawyers cited medical distress, but the truth was obvious: the Queen had fallen from the tower, and the world was watching. What they didn't know, what only I, Blake, and Ava knew, was that Liam's final letter to me had one last postscript. One I had not shared until now. *P.S. If she burns it all down, rebuild something better. For you. For us. For someone who will come after, *. So I did. With Ava's help, I launched the Elise Hale Foundation for Ethical Founders, a nonprofit that helped entrepreneurs protect their legacy from family exploitation, with legal resources and mental health advocacy. The first grant we issued went to a young woman who'd been pushed out of her own startup by her controlling father. She cried when we approved her case. I cried with her. 2 weeks later, I stood in courtroom 12C, facing the probate judge one final time. Ava beside me. Blake behind me. The judge reviewed the final documents. Liam's real will. The certified audio. The fraud charges. She looked at me. "Mrs. Hale," she said, "do you wish to press restitution charges?" Ava nodded once. I paused. Then said, "No." Ava blinked. "Are you sure?" "Yes. She's already lost everything that matters to her: image, legacy, access. Let her sit in the silence she tried to bury me in." The judge raised an eyebrow. Then smiled slightly. "Very well. Court acknowledges the settlement. The estate is yours in full." Outside the courtroom, reporters gathered. I stepped past them. But Blake caught up with me. "Elise," he said, holding out another envelope. "One more thing." Inside, a photo of Liam as a boy, Clarissa holding him in her arms, smiling wide. "She wasn't always like this," Blake said quietly. "But power changed her. And grief twisted it." "I know," I said, folding the photo. "But that's not my story to carry." That night, I went home. To my home. I lit a candle in the study, the mirror still slightly ajar. I placed Liam's journals in the oak bookshelf he built with his own hands. Then I walked to the kitchen. On the counter sat a small herb box: rosemary, thyme, basil, growing from the roots I had planted months ago. I trimmed one sprig, crushed it gently between my fingers. The smell of renewal. Later, I opened my laptop and drafted one last email. To the subscribers of the new foundation. Subject: why I stayed quiet, until I didn't. I wrote it all. Not for sympathy. Not for revenge. But for truth. Because Liam once said. *, they can take your titles. Your invitations. Even your name. But if you hold on to your truth, they never really win. *. And this? This was my truth. The house they tried to steal became the fortress they could never breach. And the woman they called just a guest became the only name on the deed. Forever.